This paper is by Jeff Choppin at the University of Rochester, Christine Green at the State University of New York Geneseo, and Bill Zahner at San Diego State University. We present an article on why ambitious reforms succeed or fail. Specifically, we present a framework and we apply that framework to an illustrative case. The title of the article is Demands, Tensions, and Resources When Implementing Ambitious Mathematics. The premise is that ambitious math reforms entail many demands, and if these demands are not adequately met, then the reform is going to falter. The framework describes the demands of instructional reform, how those demands may be in tension with other initiatives, and the conditions that might sustain implementations of instructional reforms. The specific instructional reform we focus on in this paper is ambitious mathematics teaching, or AMT. AMT departs from teacher-centered mathematics classroom practices. There are 4 components in our definition of ambitious math teaching. First, teachers are expected to elicit and be responsive to student thinking, and to make that student thinking public and the center of collective attention. So second, AMT positions students as mathematical doers and assumes they have competencies. Third, doing these things requires that teachers use high-demand tasks that are non-routine and give students an opportunity to reason. And finally, throughout the literature on ambitious math, there's attention to equity in which teachers seek to broaden participation in mathematics. Turning to our framework for demands and tensions, AMT entails many internal demands for both teachers and students, and we break these into knowledge demands, perspective demands, and practice demands. In terms of knowledge demands, there are linguistic and cognitive demands placed upon students due to the inclusion of non-routine problems. This demand requires that teachers have additional math knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge. There are perspective demands for both students and teachers. Mathematics is seen as more fluid and dynamic, and students are expected to struggle. And this shift from typical mathematics classes places demands on both students and teachers. In terms of practice demands, students take on greater authority. And for teachers and other educators, there are a range of leadership and decision-making styles and other organizational changes that have to take place to support ambitious math. So ideally, there are resources that are allocated to address these demands, and in ideal circumstances, the resources balance out the demands. In addition to internal demands, there are external demands. School-based external demands can include curriculum writing processes and other internal initiatives, while external demands are things such as federal and state-based, such as teacher evaluations and state tests. Ideally, the internal and external demands are in balance, so that the external demands don't overwhelm the internal demands from ambitious math teaching. But we recognize that there are often tensions between these sets of initiatives because they have different perspectives and practices associated with them. And in some cases there's alignment, so they're complementary and reinforcing. It's also true that in some cases, instructional leaders can buffer the impact of external demands on internal demands. In the paper, we lay out the literature on these dimensions. In the empirical part of the paper, we present an illustrative case that takes place in a high-need school that had been implementing AMT for over 5 years. We explore the demands generated by AMT at the site, how a school-based curriculum writing process and state assessments impacted the implementation of AMT. The findings address the kinds of demands that were in place, how those demands were in tension with other initiatives, including an internal initiative and an external initiative. The conclusions highlight policy coherence, conditions of the research site that supported the reform, and the overall success of the reform.